right, welcome back. We had some market-moving news out late Friday after the markets were all closed, interestingly enough, if you ask me. Smartphones and computers will be exempted from Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Now, Trump earlier this month imposed 145% tariffs on products from China, a move that was poised to take a toll on tech companies like Apple, right? Which makes most of its products in China. Now, the guidance also includes exclusions for other electronic devices and components, including semiconductors, solar cells, flat panel TV displays, flash drives, memory cards, and solid-state drives used for storing data. If I didn't know any better, it kind of sounds like Tim Cook got a hold of the president's ear here. Let's get my next guest on to tell us what she thinks about it all. Please welcome into the show, Rebecca Walser. Rebecca, thanks for being on. Look, I like the idea of tariffs. I like the idea of fair trade. I like the idea of a lot of what Donald Trump's doing. I didn't like how this came out Friday night after the markets were closed. I really didn't, number one. And number two, I kind of still feel like we're drinking from a fire hose here with all the things that they're doing. I'm wondering if there was implementation or operationally, if we could kind of go in and a little bit feather things in rather than just absolutely blast away. But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I want to be so supportive of this new administration. I want to give them time to implement their policy. But it does concern me that we have a president who has the guts to actually go after unfair international trade barriers and all kinds of things that we've been putting up with for years under all kinds of administrations, both sides. And he has the nerve to do it. But then when it does cause pain, Scott, he seems to make these carve outs so that we can get positive market news. And I guess for me, I expect these kinds of changes that they are going to be painful. They are going to create equity issue, and that's going to be expected. So if we're trying to carve out little, industries or sectors of the market to give them preferable treatment so that these policies don't impact Foxconn, Apple, whatever in China, then we're not really implementing the policy. And so it's like saying, hey, we want you to take this medication, but maybe not. If it's going to be painful, then let's execute and let's explain that to the American public, and let's explain the transition period, even though it is going to be unknown and the impact is going to be unknown, and let's tell them that. But to keep giving Americans and markets really and sector leaders and Fortune 100 people that run the world this hope that their industry might be exempted out is really just putting it needs to just be implemented and stabilized without the carve-outs. So for me, I'm not a fan of, hey, we're implementing this, oh, we're going to pause it. Hey, we're implementing this, oh, we're going to carve out. Because we really need to see if this is what his plan is, and President Trump will respect it, then let's implement and let's deal with the expense of the pain of whatever it is. But to try to carve this out on a hodgepodge, whatever industry sector needs to reach the favor, I just can't buy into it, Scott. I just can't.
Yeah, you know what? When you do it that way, you're exactly right. With no pain, there's no change in behavior, right?
There isn't. I mean, I've heard so many business leaders talk about to truly change our supply chains will take 5 to 10 years. And they expect Trump's tariff policy to last 4 years, the executive order tariff policy to last for the 4 years of the duration of his presidency. So there you go. Right there, you've got CEOs making the determination that my change to implement and to circumvent this policy is a 5 to 10 year lead time, and this will only be effective for 4 years. Now, the problem is, if it's effective for 4 years and makes your business not survive for those 4 years, you don't have a choice. But you will have to find alternative supply chains, and you'd have to do it much faster than 5 to 10 years on building your own factories back over here in the United States. So I'm not exactly sure what Trump's actual end game is. If his end game is to get manufacturing to truly come back to the United States, or to just end tariffs that are not reciprocal, then that's fine. We need to know the end game, and we need to implement, and we need to not carve out, because it's painful. It is going to be painful. And instead of, carving out, we need just explanation. We need to prepare the American people for the pain that it's going to cause.
Right, and because he's doing it to so many different places at the same time, that makes it a little bit more dramatic. And number two, I just kind of feel like now we're just in a tariff war with Shine and Temu. Right? I mean, that's what it feels like to me.
I mean, no, it's a great point. And like, well, you can look at the Alibaba stock, right? Traded on U.S. exchanges. But if you were to think that Trump was going to go forward with his regulatory policy, you would say, hey, maybe I could buy Alibaba. Maybe I could, avoid, because they're obviously squarely in the Chinese market. They're very firmly in the Middle East. They're firmly in Europe. So they're rooted so far out in the West and the Middle East and, Asia that they might be fine during a tariff policy implemented directly against China. However, they're traded on U.S. exchanges. So now you have politicians talking about delisting Chinese companies that are, purely, Alibaba is obviously international, but it's mostly in China and listed on our exchanges. So then they're going to try to prevent Americans from maybe investing in Chinese-only countries because we're really in a tariff war with China, direct head-to-head war between the two largest economies in the world. So we are in a really odd point of this market and an administration that's trying to make change, but yet the biggest concern, Scott, let's not kid you, it's not the equity market, it's the 10-year yield.
100%.
Trump administration is going to look at that 10-year yield, and the second they see problems in the swap market, the second they see the hedge funds not going into the repo market, not making these deals that they're used to making and providing liquidity for the actual, system, and then you have the Federal Reserve after those liquidity problems that you start to see happening because of what's happening. You see the Federal Reserve, 3 members last week coming out and saying they are not going to intervene and help Trump. And not all 3 didn't say we're not going to help Trump, but one of them said we don't, like my former one said, we don't think we should be helping Trump's policy. So this is a lot more around the 10-year yield and what is happening in the liquidity markets than it is about tariff policy or a downturn in the markets, recession, depression, whatever you want to say. This is a lot more around risk and yield and liquidity and global capital markets.
And the only thing that makes me feel any better about that, and real quick before we go, is that Scott Bessent's the guy that they're pushing out front now, because I traded against him when he was with Soros and Druckenmiller in London in 1992. He's a smart guy and he knows the markets, and I think he's got Trump's ear about that 10-year yield and about all the other things the swaps market. So hopefully we've got some comfort there, and I'm going to have to take some from that. That's my takeaway. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for coming on with us. I know you're busy on a Monday. Rebecca Walser, Walser Wealth Management, Tampa, Florida.